Another way to represent data is with what's called a frequency polygon. In order to get a frequency polygon, we need a class midpoint. So we're going to be working with the midpoint there. So in order to do a midpoint, think about what is a midpoint. It's in the middle, right? It's a midpoint. It's in the middle. So how do I get something in the middle? Yep, add them up and divide them by 2. Exactly. So you add the class limits and then divide by 2. Class limits, right? The upper and the lower. So the top and the bottom. Add up the top and the bottom and then divide it by 2 so you can see what's in the middle there. That's a midpoint. Okay. A frequency polygon. Now this is, so you need a midpoint in order to get your frequency polygon, just so you know that. However, this one just looks different. All right. So let's talk about what it is and then we'll get to the specifics of it. So a frequency polygon is a graph that uses points connected by line segments. Connected by line segments. All right. To represent frequencies for the classes. Frequencies for the classes. It is constructed by plotting a point above each class midpoint. That's where that midpoint, you got to know what a midpoint is because that's how these are constructed. On the horizontal axis at a height equal to the frequency of the class. Next, line segments are drawn connecting consecutive points. 2 additional line segments are drawn connecting each end to the horizontal graph. Now, this is the polygon part. So way back when you had geometry, a polygon is a closed figure. So the whole concept associated with a frequency polygon is it has to be a closed figure. That's the polygon part of it. All right. So when you plot this midpoint, that is the value that you're actually going to plot. That's what's plotted on the graph. Now I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it better, and then let's talk about it because here's a frequency polygon. When you have your frequency polygon, look at what's happening here. This is the same data that we had of the fines in New York City. So remember that was last section, same data. So we're doing our class limits here from 50 to 74.9. You want to get the midpoint. Now, again, notice we're using 75 here. You're not using 74.99. We're rounding off those values. So 50, 75 divided by 2 is going to be 62.5. This is the value that you plot. 62.5. We're plotting that value. That's the point. That is your midpoint. In a frequency polygon, the point is the midpoint. All right, that's the key. And the frequency here is 1, so it just goes up to the 1. All right, and you can do relative frequency. We're just doing the frequency for this particular one because that's what it stated, but this chart just gives us everything in case you wanted to do both. All right, the key to this is the frequency. Now check this out. What's the very first segment that we're looking at here? The very first class. Is it 62.5? Well, then tell me, why do I even have a point right here? Because it's a polygon. 2 additional line segments are drawn to complete this. These 2 values have nothing to do with anything. Their sole purpose is to make it a polygon. So it cleans it up and it sticks it down there by the horizontal axis. That is it. It does not represent data. It just completes my polygon. All right, so that is the key to this. Also, notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 different classes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 classes. Again, these last 2 are not classes. That just completes the polygon, and that's it. All right, here's the next thing I want to point. out to you. If you don't have this chart over here, if you were just given this frequency polygon and you had to come up with information, here are some key aspects. This is a midpoint. Does it tell you what the classes are in here? No. Do you see that? It only gives the midpoints. So if I want to determine what are my classes, what's the lower limit, what's the upper limit, if I'm trying to figure that out, you're going to have to do a little detective work in here. Let me get purple, a different color, and I'm going to make this bigger. And I know from here to here are my class limits. So I have to say what's happening between there. And that's where you get your 50 and your 75. Do you see what's going down? So that's how you can determine your lower class limit up to the upper class limit. And the same thing that's happened right in there, right? So we know this is 100, etc. as you go through. Now remember, when we're doing limits, you have to be able to tally these. And so your first class has to go from 50 to 74.99. That's your first class, because you cannot have a 75 in the first class and a 75 in the second class. So remember back when we talked about that in the last section? Hey, guess what? We're building on that. And we're building on that information, so you had to know that previous information to put it into the current lesson so that we can work in terms of these classes and put it on this frequency polygon. How you doing? The key to this is you've got the midpoints. You can get your classes based out of it. If you don't have the table, no problem. You can go between those values in order to figure out what your upper and lower limits are. And then you can get your frequency polygon from there. You're going to have to get that. You have to do that in the homework. Given the polygon, pull that stuff off. This is usually where people have questions. That's why I'm kind of talking about it a little bit. I want to make sure you understand what's going down with that. All right, frequency polygon, just another way in order to show that quantitative data.